Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another session of In the Lab with Tracy Gibbs. I'm Tracy Gibbs, the Chief Science Officer for LifeWise, and I've got a pretty amazing announcement or presentation I want to make tonight. Um, and I want to start by doing a little introduction of myself and a little bit of history behind what I'm about to tell you because there's quite a long story about what I'm going to be presenting tonight. So, first and foremost, for those of you who know me, you know that I'm a pharmacognosist. That is somebody who uh, discovers and utilizes new or what's called phytomolecules or phytonutrients. My background is in organic chemistry and ethnobotany. So I've studied how plants can affect your health throughout cultures and civilizations throughout the world history. That was one of the most fascinating things I was able to study was ethnobotany. But I've taken that knowledge and I started formulating dietary supplements, skincare, and OTC products clear back in 1993, 94. So I've been doing it now for over 28 years. Um, and throughout my career, I guess you could say the holy grail of formulas was, I guess, back in the 90s, was to be able to produce a whole food multivitamin. These things just didn't exist back in the 90s. And so I was fascinated. In fact, I was actually a believer, strongly believed that if we grew our foods right and if we just ate good, wholesome foods, we would never need to supplement. We call those people a whole foodist. I was a whole foodist back in the 90s. Now, that belief was completely shattered in 2001. And the reason being is because I had spent a lot of my own personal money and a good portion of my time to produce what I thought would be the coolest whole food supplement on the planet at the time. And this was from about 1998 to 2001. I was working on this product. I literally had searched everywhere for the best greens. I was buying alfalfa and barley grass from Canada, which were and still are today considered, the best, most nutrient dense planet or foods on the earth. And spirulina from Hawaii and Taiwan, which those companies were saying they had the most nutrient dense food on the planet and whatnot. And I had gathered all of these from all over the world and I had put them into this little, you know, powder mix, special freeze drying processes that preserved all the nutrients. Um, I sent that blend of powders to a lab in 2001 once I had completed what I thought would be the ultimate formula. When I got those lab results back, I was so disappointed to find out. And when I started doing the math, everything was, it had all the B vitamins, it had all these micronutrients and everything, trace elements and whatnot. But when I looked at the quantities on this lab report, it was like, holy cow, I would have to eat that's 900 grams. Yeah, I was going to say it was 1.2, but that was a different formula. This particular formula was 900 grams of powder, of this freeze dried powder that I would have to consume every day in order to get over 100% of the daily recommended allowances. Now, 900 grams, for those of you who don't work in milligrams and kilograms and whatnot, is almost 2 pounds. Okay. Can you imagine eating 2 pounds of powdery green crap every day just to get all of your nutrients? It wasn't going to happen. And I was super depressed. And I actually became a believer in supplementation after that because we just can't get out of the foods nowadays enough unless literally that's all we ate, unless we ate 2 pounds of this stuff every day, right? And when I say 2 pounds, you guys have to realize this was concentrated like nutrients in a freeze dried process. So it probably equated to 25 pounds of plant material, right? You'd literally have to be like a horse or an elephant eating out of a trough. I mean, yeah, you'd probably become diabetic, screw up your digestive tract, and or become severely constipated if you really ate this much stuff every day. But that's what the formula ended up being, and so I scrapped the whole idea of thinking or believing that we could just eat good food and get all the nutrients we needed. And I became a huge believer that everybody needs to supplement after that. That was in 2001. Now, I continued my research though, and over the next 3 years, I discovered that there were companies out there that had pretty cool fermentation processes. And then I discovered from Europe certain pollens and nutritional yeasts that were used in everyday life in Sweden and Norway and places like that that were super nutrient dense and whatnot. But even then, putting these into a easily to use supplement form was way too expensive and whatnot. But again, 3 years passed and I gave it another go and thought that I produced a pretty decent product, although it was a great big 50-gram scoop and it still was only giving you about 20% of all your daily supply. It still was cool. Well, I still considered myself cutting edge, and so I still wanted to study and do more research. I found a company out of Missouri that created horse feed that can condense and concentrate nutrients through a really cool fermentation process that they had patented, and that was cool. And I ended up making a supplement using their products, or their process, I should say. Uh, and this was, by the time I developed this product, it was about 2017. So again, this has been my holy grail quest, right? Well, since 2017, a lot has changed. A lot of cool processes, uh, literally fermentation processes that I've discovered in India, and then there's companies who have introduced me new methods of freeze drying or food locking in nutrients and whatnot. So, what I started doing the latter half of last year and into the spring of this year, I did my quest again. I went back to uh, uh, a company in Iceland that has a red algae, which is a super 30% concentrate of calcium. Uh, I found a company from India that has a papaya extract that's high in B vitamins, along with lemon peel and holy basil. I went back to some sources and suppliers in Brazil for the maqui berry. Uh, um, I got sea greens from Japan, like a brown seaweed that I'm familiar with, a company there. Did I say Brazil already? I went to Hawaii and got some spirulina, rose hips from the United States, actually about half a dozen nutrient sources from the United States, alfalfa, barley grass from Canada. Anyway, I just scoured the globe for these highly concentrated, super dense nutrients, and then did these new fermentation processes on them, and the really something cool really happened. Okay, so this is what I'm about to introduce to you. The final product of what I finally finished here in about February of this year contained over 20 vitamins and minerals, macro minerals. Now, it has about 72 different trace minerals in it as well, seven different high doses of enzymes, digestive enzymes like protease, amylase, lipase, things like that. Um, 9 strains of active probiotics at 1 billion CFUs or more. I mean, again, great probiotic. It has the ingredients I gathered, over 32 different organically sourced super fruits and vegetables, plant life from all over the world. One of those plants is the sea buckthorn berry, and I found a company that highly concentrates the sea buckthorn oil so that it tests quite high in omega 3, omega 6, 5, omega 7, omega 9. It's got all the omegas in a vegan or vegetarian source, right? Um, when all was said and done, this was like one of the most expensive products that I've ever created. Um, and thanks to my partner and me being an owner, nobody was able to say no. One of the things I didn't explain earlier is that, yeah, I had created some really cool formulas in the past for other companies, and other companies always said, no, we can't do this. Can you water it down? Can you take this out? Can you do this to it? Or, shrink active ingredients or add more filler, whatever, to get the cost down. It was always seems like the lawyers and the accountants who took over the formulation process after that. So I was never able to achieve my holy grail of formulas, right? During this entire formulating process and doing the R&D on this product, typically I would name a product before I formulated it, right? So that I would have something to refer to. I could never do it with this product. So whenever I was talking to other people or talking to the suppliers as I was gathering the raw materials, I'd be like, yeah, hey, I'm going to be using your ingredient in the one. It's going to be the one product, my holy grail. And so throughout the entire R&D process, I kept referring to this product as the one. This is the one. This is the one I've been waiting forever to formulate. Well, the name kind of stuck, and I still haven't, to this day, not been able to think of a name that would sufficiently describe this product. So, as I was talking with Rob about this product, we both started calling it the one, and the one stuck. So, um, I am very proud and very pleased to introduce you all to the most expensive product I've ever created, the most comprehensive product I've ever created. I want to introduce you to the one. Uh, if you were to have your normal retail margins, so not network marketing, not direct sales, just normal factory to retail, this product would cost you about $220 if we used the regular retail margins. Now, if we did direct sales or network marketing margins, this product would cost you over $300 to purchase. And that's just normal margins. But again, thanks to LifeWise and thanks to our revenue share program and how we're able to provide things at wholesale to you, you're going to get this product, you guys, for $78. I know it's nuts. I remember back in the days when I was with Atrium, and Atrium was the owner of the Garden of Life line, and some of the products that were being produced at Garden of Life, again, great products. They even have a food, or what they call a renature. It's mostly nutritional yeast products, things like that. They were retailing for over $70. This is far above and beyond and more advanced than what you're going to find anywhere. Again, I can't, this is the one. This is the one and only product you'll ever need for nutrients. It's the one you and your family, from your children to your grandparents, is ever going to need. It's the one. It's the one that's going to replace everything. If you're taking 8 or 9 different supplements right now, in my training that I will give on the one next week, which I'll announce later, you will see why this can replace everything. In fact, just this morning, I was having a text conversation and they sent me a photo of everything that they're taking. And I kind of know some of those brands, and I guesstimated that they were spending a little over $300, maybe $320 a month. And I said, hey, the one is going to replace like $240 of those products. You'll still need this one and that one over there. Those are great. He had a collagen peptide and other things that he was taking too. But literally the one would save him $220 every month. It's an incredible product. So I introduced to you tonight the one. Today is mostly just a presentation of the one, an explanation of the history of how it came to be, and I've kind of done that. I want to introduce to you one other product tonight. This is a product we've also talked about that I've mentioned on Facebook Lives that I've done before. Excuse me. And I will also give an in-depth training on that, not next week Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that. So June 13th, I will give an in-depth, in-detailed training on the one. We'll go over all of the nutrients in there, all the major categories in a way, because again, there's hundreds of nutrients. I can't go over all of them in a 30-minute presentation, but I certainly can give you detailed, in-depth training on how I source the ingredients, where I source them from, why I added those ingredients, and what the benefits of these ingredients are going to be for you. And that'll be June 13th. You won't want to miss that. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's talk right now. I want to introduce the second product that we're going to be offering at LifeWise. on our grand opening, the second new product, I should say. And that is called Shield. So as I mentioned before, I usually name a product when I formulate it or as I'm working on the formula. This one took a while to name too, because it comes from a pretty rare molecule called GMI, molecule peptide, I should say, called GMI. And I want to introduce and talk a little bit about this peptide. Everybody, I believe, knows the reishi mushroom. In fact, if you just do a internet search for reishi mushroom, look, you're going to come up with over 2,000 peer-reviewed published clinical studies on reishi mushroom, and more importantly, the active ingredient or the active nutrient in reishi mushroom that's called beta-glucan. Beta-glucan is widely researched, a very well-known substance from not just reishi, but you can find it in shiitake and you can find it in maitake mushrooms, albeit in lower quantity. And the reishi beta-glucan is a little bit unique. Now, we didn't understand why it was unique. I didn't know why it was unique. But 15 years ago, there was a scientist at the University of Taiwan who discovered why the beta-glucan in reishi mushroom was unique and different from other forms of beta-glucan that were coming from other types of mushrooms. Now we know. Now I know today. Now I learned this back in February on a trip to Taiwan. And this is why I'm really excited to present the Shield to you today, because this particular researcher at the University of Taiwan discovered a unique peptide found only in the beta-glucan from reishi mushroom. And he was able to isolate this peptide. It's a very extensive isolation process. We'll talk about how extensive later and why this peptide is so expensive. But he was able to isolate this peptide, and then again 15 years ago started doing clinical research on this particular peptide. This peptide, he called it GMI. There's a little book on it here now. This book's all in Chinese. We're getting it translated, but over 45 peer-reviewed published clinical studies on this molecule now, on this peptide, excuse me, I keep calling it a molecule, on this peptide. And it's got 150 studies underway right now, okay? So it's going to be a highly researched peptide. Now, he also started working on global patents. There are 22 global patents on this peptide. When I was in Taiwan and I discovered what he was doing, I started asking him the business side of questions. Hey, how much of this peptide can you produce in a month? What's the cost? Things like that. Wheels are spinning in my head, especially after I saw the clinical studies he was working on. And most of those I can't even mention online because the FDA would, crack down on it. I mean, again, he's an MD, PhD. So as an MD, he's focusing on a lot of diseases, right? A lot of diseases that are common nowadays. But let me just tell you some of the categories of clinical studies that he was working on with GMI. First and foremost, he was looking at the immunomodulation properties. Now, this is something I've taught for years, that beta-glucans are not immune boosters. They are immune modulators. In other words, if you have a super high overactive immune system, now what that means, overactive immune system is like allergies, inflammation, when your white blood cells are eating themselves and other cells around you, right? That's, for example, like celiac is an overactive immune system. Rheumatoid arthritis is an overactive immune system, right? They give you immunosuppressants when you have these types of diseases. So he was doing research on immunomodulation. So suppressing the immune system when it's high or boosting the immune system when it's low. That's what immunomodulation means. That was one category of all the clinical studies that he's been doing. He's also been doing them on the anti-inflammatory properties of GMI. A really cool subject that he's done multiple clinical studies on now, by the way, is neuroregeneration. the neurorestorative properties of GMI. And he's also done, being an MD in his particular specialty, being cancer, he's done multiple studies with amazing results, by the way, on tumor and cancer. Now, again, this is the molecule GMI I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Shield, the product, right? So the studies are just incredible. And by the way, of course, when he discovered the extraction method for this particular peptide, he was worried about safety of this particular peptide. So he contracted a third party, actually a global, world-renowned bioscience laboratory. I'm trying to remember the name. These guys do tons of testing for, I want to call it Pharmatron, but it might be Pharmacon. I'll get that to you later when I do my in-depth training 2 weeks from now. But they did third-party independent safety studies on this particular peptide and found that even 100 times the dose that he was using to treat specific diseases, it was found to be safe and have no side effects or even drug contraindications, which was remarkable. I think that's one of the miracle properties of GMI. Anyway, I combined GMI when I got samples from him. I combined it with like elderberry extract, nano forms of quercetin, vitamin C, and zinc, some of my other favorite ingredients, and I was able to combine them into a convenient oral dissolving strip, something like this, right? That you just put on your tongue and dissolve into your mouth. Now, because of the extraction methods and how complicated this is probably the world's most expensive ingredient, over $200,000 per kilogram. Okay, it quadruples the price of like rose essential oil from Bulgaria, more than quadruples the price of saffron extract, more than 10 times the price of like hyaluronic acid and Botox and some of these other commonly known expensive, ingredients out there. So I don't know for a fact, but I'm guessing from my knowledge, this is by far the most expensive ingredient I've ever purchased. But again, thanks to LifeWise and our revenue share plan and what we can do with the wholesale prices, we're able to offer this at, by the way, a dose that was in many of these studies that I just mentioned, all the things that he's done, these 45 published peer-reviewed clinical studies, he's done 3 different doses. One of those doses that he used for many of those studies is the dose that we have in Shield, okay? So at the right dose, we're not like microdosing you, we're not dumbing down this formula in any way. We're giving it to you at the clinically recommended dose, and we can sell it to you for $49. It's an incredible price, an incredible offering. And that, by the way, that's a month supply. Some people are like, $49 a dose? Oh my gosh, I've had that before. No, $49 for a month's supply. So you'll get 30 of these oral dissolving strips that you take once a day. Now, can you take more? Of course you can. If I had problems going on, if I had some disease or an immunomodulatory disease of some type or overactive immune system, I would take 2 or 3 of these a day. That's just what I would do if it were me. Anyway, so I want to go ahead and wrap things up now. I've done the introduction on the one. We've talked about the Shield. I'm going to announce right now, next week, Tuesday, June 13th, in the lab with me. You will not want to miss this because I will do an in-depth training on the one. But not only that, after that, I'm going to make a special announcement of how you can pre-order this product and get a deal, a great deal, okay? You have to watch it to learn what this announcement's going to be. So in the next week, you guys now have 7 days to share this information, get people so that they can have Tuesday night off, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. MST, Mountain Time, all right? So they will listen and hear the in-depth introduction and training on the one, and be able to take advantage of the special offer, which we're going to be announcing that evening. So I want thousands of people on my Facebook Live next week. Okay. We can do this. You can get the information out there. This is the one that everybody's been waiting for. It's the one that I get literally dozens of questions on every day. When are you coming out with the one? It's starting. The training will be next week, Tuesday. The announcement on the special and the deal and the offering will be after I do my training next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So share this information with everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight. Again, I know you could be anywhere, but you chose to be here listening to me. That is not lost on me. I appreciate that. At LifeWise, we love and appreciate all of you guys. It's you why we started this company. Honesty, integrity, transparency, that's what we're all about. Look, anything I've talked about tonight, I will share references for. It's not hype, it's real science. And I'll give those references, by the way, on the one in next week's training. And then 2 weeks from now, when I do the in-depth training on the shield, I'll give you links to some of the clinical studies. All of them you can find. Go to PubMed, go to NIH.gov right now, type in benefits of GMI or GMI from reishi or GMI from beta glucan. They come up. You'll see them on the search engine there. But anyway, thanks again for watching tonight. I hope you guys all have a good evening. Good night.